Let's go further in depth now. And to do so, we're pleased to welcome in former Illinois Congressman Michael Patrick Flanagan, currently president of Flanagan Consulting, and Pete Hoekstra, ex-congressman from Michigan, former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee. To you both, as you Skype in from Washington and our Newsmax facilities there, we thank you very much. Pete, let's start with you. What's the intelligence update on what's going down under in Sydney?
Well, there's not much of an intelligence update at this point, other than it looks like it's probably a homegrown terrorist attack, a homegrown, funneled mass casualty type of attack is what they may be looking for. But until we actually apprehend this individual, until we start peeling back the layers, we won't know a whole lot about this particular situation. But over the long run, Australia has been a steadfast ally with the United States against radical jihadists. They are clearly a target, just as America's homeland is a target.
And as we understand, not only that situation with hostages in Australia, but something that has transpired, I believe, today in Belgium. So we are seeing incidents worldwide. Any possibility that's related to release of the Senate CIA report, Pete?
I don't think so. I mean, I think it's very hard to draw that kind of causal impact. ISIS and other radical jihadist groups, they will use the release of the Senate intelligence report. They will use it in their social media. They will use it as a recruiting tool, both to try to attract people to Libya, to Syria, to Iraq, and other places where they're actively engaged in war. And they will also use it to try to incite, again, homegrown terrorists, which are the most difficult to stop. They will use it as a recruiting tool, but to directly link this attack or potential attack in Australia to the release of the Senate report, I think I think that's probably a little bit of a stretch.
Michael Patrick Flanagan, you bring an interesting resume, not only as a former member of Congress, but a former military man in Iraq for Gulf War I, and then back with what transpired during the time in that second Gulf War. International terrorism. Do you expect it to increase in the days and months ahead?
I don't know if it'll increase relating to the Senate Democrats' report, but I do know that it will be on the uptick now and in the future. Much of the targets, if you want to call them that the Bush administration developed over the years were developed for intelligence purposes, that we could mine and resource and worm our way into these organizations and break them up and take them apart. President Obama has taken all of those sources and basically droned them into non-existence, which has given ISIS and other al-Qaeda affiliated organizations the opportunity to grow exponentially because we've used up our targets. We've killed all that we know, and we haven't developed any ability to find others and to actually root out the problems with these organizations.
A little less than a minute 30 remains. Let's return to the piece of audio and video that we saw from Meet the Press. Dick Cheney emphatically supporting the techniques utilized, waterboarding. He says it saved American lives. The reaction from Cheney, emotional and hard-hitting to you both. Do you agree with what Dick Cheney had to say? Pete, to you first.
Absolutely, and I give credit to the former vice president. When I was briefed as part of the Gang of Eight in 2004, Republicans and Democrats were in the room, some of the same Democrats who today are so viciously attacking the former vice president in the Bush administration and the CIA. In 2004, 2003, they were as enthusiastic about this program as what the former vice president was on Sunday.
Fair enough. Let me turn.
They reviewed it. They had the opportunity to stop it, and they didn't.
So mindful of that 15 seconds, Mike, is that just typical hypocrisy from Capitol Hill?
Yeah, Cheney's furious because it was an agonizing decision for him to move forward with this enhanced interrogation, whereas for the Obama administration, I remember a quote from Rahm Emanuel when he was chief of staff, blithely, he'd walk into the office.
We have to hold on to that. We'll be right back. Let's continue our conversation with former Congressman Pete Hoekstra and Michael Patrick Flanagan. Mike, you were making a point about Rahm Emanuel and the Obama administration when our break got in the way. You want to finish your thought on that?
Sure thing, JD. Thanks for putting up with the fact that I don't know what 15 seconds actually is. I remember in 2010, I think it was, when Rahm Emanuel was chief of staff of the White House. I remember this because I was so startled by it. He said he'd come into the office every day and ask, "Who did we get today?" as if he were part of the war effort himself. He was talking about droning, and he was talking about killing off the contacts that the Bush administration had developed over the years. Horrible people who needed to die, but maybe people we weren't done mining information from yet, and merely to score some quick victories. And by doing that, we have freed that organization to grow by leaps and bounds, and we have no real good intelligence about it anymore because we don't develop any intelligence. They have a blithe attitude about the droning, where Cheney agonized over whether or not to have the enhanced interrogation with the people that we had captured. Obama sends them out of Guantanamo. The Bush administration put them in so we could find out information from them. The Democrats have nowhere to stand on this, and this report does not help them at all. As Pete was absolutely correct in observing, so many people that signed off on that report now fully approved of these behaviors earlier. It is rank hypocrisy, and it's sad to watch.
Well, what was also sad to watch for many of us, the proceedings on the floor of the United States Senate over the weekend. Let's take a look at the interchange between Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid and the senior senator from Illinois, Dick Durbin, going after Texas Senator Ted Cruz. Listen.
This is the same senator who shut down the government last year in protest over the Affordable Care Act.
Very same man now. He's hung up on not only the Affordable Care Act, but the president's action to give 5 million people relief in this country so that they can come out of the shadows and make our country a more productive place.
I thank the majority leader and hope that we can find some bipartisan majority to move forward.
Well, they found it. Harry Reid calls it relief. I think a lot of us call it amnesty. Pete Hoekstra, your reaction to the 56-40 vote for that $1.1 trillion Cromnibus package?
Well, JD, I'm not surprised. Michael, you and I, we were all there for these kinds of situations. And coming off the government shutdown roughly a year ago, they were not going to shut down government. The levers of power that Republicans were willing to use as they come to the end of this year were very, very limited. Now they're going to have to regroup. Speaker Boehner, Majority Leader McConnell are going to have to develop a strategy to reduce spending, to go after the Affordable Care Act, and to effectively try to roll back the immigration policies that the president has done by executive order. They don't have a coherent strategy. If they're going to challenge this president, they're going to have to develop a broad strategy that their caucuses are going to buy into, and at this point they don't. And if Republicans are divided, they will be ineffective.
Now, Mike, when you were with us a couple of weeks ago, we were talking about this, and you said it would be wise just to fund spending until February, when that new Republican majority came in. As it stands now, the president gets most of his spending clear on till next September, and he gets to fund his amnesty project for 3 months. Is it going to be tough for Republicans to backtrack on amnesty 3 months from now?
I hope not. And I think that Boehner's thinking, at least I hope his thinking is if we take this sword of Damocles of funding the government from our heads, that'll free us to get tough with the White House. And if that's the plan, I'm all for it. Because Boehner is not, milk toast. A lot of people think he's weak, and he's none of those things. He is a tough guy. He is a hard negotiator. And I think he will take us to a place we're very glad we'll be in April and May. We'll look back and say the strategy was good. I think Peter's right again. I think we need a better announced strategy. But I know a lot of people around Boehner, and I can't believe they're stumbling along. I think they're probably working a very good strategy now. And the fact that they didn't fund amnesty through the end of the year, but only until March, should tip your hat and it should tip your hand a little bit and say there's something coming.
All right, a minute is left. Pete, can they actively come back and roll back that amnesty, or is there going to be political pressure and, quite frankly, political sympathy for some pro-amnesty Republicans saying, no, we can't do it now? 30 seconds for your thought on that, Pete.
No, I think clearly they will have their options. This is something that they're going to have to do. They're going to have to do that, and they're going to have to do something on the Affordable Care Act. They will come back with a strategy.
Well, let's hope so, because right now everybody's on Christmas break and the government stays in business. But of course, as we know, perception can outweigh reality, and those so-called shutdowns keep a good chunk of the government up and running. Gentlemen, we appreciate it. Pete Hoekstra, former chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, and Michael Patrick Flanagan, the so-called giant slayer when he defeated Ways and Means Chairman Dan Rostenkowski about 20 years ago. Gents, for your analysis and expertise, we thank you, and America's Forum will continue.